If you break down the 10K number to like 4 $2,500 a month retainers or 3 $3,500 a month retainers, as opposed to like, I have to land 4 or 5 new clients every single month, it gives you predictable income. Also, it makes the 10K number a month less daunting and scary.
Niching down isn't going to limit you. It's actually going to put you into a better position to actually work with the clients that you want to work with. We want you working with the big dogs who value your time, value your energy, and you're actually going to make the work that makes you happy. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 148 of the 505 podcast. Today, we're bringing you the no BS guide to making $10,000 per month as a creative. But first, let's get into the one-handed crack. Here we go. Boom. A lot of spillage. I think that's the first time I've ever dented a can. It did pop out. One of my worst scores. Got to give myself a 5.2. Go ahead. Dude, these were horrendously bad.
Did you shake these up beforehand?
I didn't shake them up. I don't know what's going on. I did put them in the freezer, though. That does tend to do something.
Well, hey, cheers to making more money, huh?
Cheers to getting the rocks, more bread. If you don't know us, welcome. This is the 505 podcast. We talk a lot about creative, entrepreneurship, all things that are going to help you guys in your careers. I'm super excited about this episode, though, because it's one we've wanted to do for a long time. What are a few of the things that are keeping people below $10,000 per month as a creative?
I would say the biggest thing is that they don't niche down and specialize. One of the biggest things that we're going to talk about in this episode is how important it is to specialize and niche down, because specialists can charge more than generalists. We're going to get into that, but I would say that's the biggest one. What about yourself? What do you think is another one?
I think another big one is just not knowing how to price your work every single day. I love helping you guys make more bread. It really gets me excited when you DM me and we work a little bit through that of trying to like charge someone. But I think that's a common one that I get, and it's repeat offenders. So people are hitting me up and they're like, yo, I don't know how to price this. Oh, I also don't know how to price this. I don't know how to price this. So today, hopefully you get a guide that you can follow and learn from and say, okay, when a deal does come in, I'm not thinking it's a fire drill every single time. I know how I'm going to price this. I know what this number should be at, and you'll feel so much more comfortable and not in this weird, like, what do we do?
And when you don't know how to price, you tend to underprice yourself and undervalue yourself as a creator.
Yeah, we don't want you guys to undervalue yourselves. What's another one?
Another one is that you don't know how to sell. And when you don't know how to sell yourself, you're just at the mercy of, I hope somebody reaches out. But a big part of this is being able to like outreach and sell your services. But if you don't know how to sell yourself properly, you're just not going to land those dream clients that you're looking for.
I think another one is just you're praying that leads come in.
Yeah.
You're sitting there looking at that empty inbox and you're like, hopefully someone hits me up today. And after this episode, I hope that you can implement some of these things so leads are starting to come through the door, and at least you have practical knowledge for actually making this step happen, not just wishing that leads are going to come in.
Absolutely. I remember we had Jeremiah Davis on the podcast, and he said that if you're not outreaching, even if you're making $500,000 a year as a creative, you're still leaving like an extra $500,000 on the table by not doing outreach. So outreach and learning how to sell yourself and generating leads, that's such an important part for making a lot of money as a creator.
This is going to be the blueprint for making $10,000 per month as a creative. If you also want to learn more about how to do this, the Dream Client Accelerator cohort is now live. This is our second time doing this. We had an amazing group the first time around. So many people asking, when is it going to reopen? And today is the day. What do they learn in the Dream Client Accelerator? This is a 6-week cohort. It's live with us. What are they going to learn?
They're going to learn how to price their work, how to pitch themselves, how to position themselves correctly in the marketplace, a lot about personal brand, and then how to generate leads.
This is going to be an all-encompassing guide of this episode. So if you find it really helpful, please go check it out. It's the top link in the description. I can't wait to help this next set of rocks, but let's get into step one.
So step number one is positioning. This is where you need to start. If you're lost and you're not making the money that you want to be making, you need to start with how you're positioned in the marketplace. You want to learn how to become the go-to expert in said niche.
Okay, and how do we go about doing that? Because you hear positioning thrown around a lot. People are like, oh, you got to position yourself as an expert. But what does that exactly mean?
In short, positioning is how you're seen in the marketplace. So give us the example for your production company, Blue Stripe, for your positioning.
Okay, so we are the specialists at short form content creation that is living on the phone. So when agencies get hit up by these brands and they're like, hey, we have the short form commercial or the short form campaign, we want them to immediately think of, oh, we should hire Blue Stripe. Those are the guys that do the stuff that lives on the phone. And when I was thinking about just positioning for the company, There's so many production companies that are doing broadcast, and they've also been doing this for 20 years. So me going up to battle against them, we can win sometimes, but they're probably going to have a better pitch when it comes to that stuff. They're like, oh, we've done this for 20 years. Where when it comes with the stuff on the phone, I think it's very hard for them to say, oh, we know what's going to go on social. And they're like, let's see your social. Let's see what you guys have done. And a lot of the times it's just these bigger broadcast spots that are chopped down. They're not really social first. So that is our entire pitch.
When you don't know your positioning, it becomes a lot harder to like market yourself. One of the first questions somebody asks you when you meet them is like, oh, what do you do? And a lot of times you're like, oh, I'm a photographer or I'm a videographer. And they're like, oh, what kind of stuff do you shoot? And you're like, well, I do this and this. You're not really positioned in a certain niche in the marketplace. So you have a hard time explaining exactly what you do. And on top of that, when you do focus on so many different things and you're a generalist, you struggle in a lot of ways. So walk me through a few of the ways that generalists struggle.
When I think of generalists, I think that they just blend into the crowd. Like there's not that specific thing that you do really well. If I just put 100 videographers in a room and then there was the ones like, I only do concerts really well. When a concert job does pop into your head, you're not going to pick from this pool of 100 people that are like, I do weddings, I do this, I do that. It's like, I want the person who's the best at concerts. So by being a generalist, you actually get overlooked for more things. And in your head, you're thinking like, oh, I can do all these different things, so I'm going to get booked more. But it actually is quite the opposite, because they're like, if it's my big day and I have a wedding, am I going to hire the guy who does concerts, or am I going to hire the person who's the wedding expert? I'm hiring the wedding expert every single time.
And that's the next point, is like, you don't have trust. When you're a generalist and you shoot a bunch of different things, clients have a hard time trusting that you're going to be able to get the job done for the specific thing that you're looking for.
Yeah. And I also think that they compete on price a lot of the time.
Absolutely.
Like, you'll throw out your rate. When you're a generalist and you just do everything for everybody, you'll get those messages of like, oh, you think we could do it for $200? You think we could do it for $300? These people are trying to nickel and dime your rate, and that's not a place that you want to be. I've worked with people on these cheaper projects before, because I used to do this. I used to do everything. I was shooting weddings. I was shooting concerts. I was shooting real estate. I was the definition of a jack of all trades in this content game. And then when I decide, oh, I'm only going to serve this type of clientele, the conversations and pitching become so much easier, because one, I'm dealing with a lot of the same brands. So I learn certain nuances, and I learn the things that actually can help them. When you're working with 74 different things, you're spread too thin. You're not putting your best foot forward in every single thing, because you're not a specialist. You're not doing it all the time. You know, when I was shooting basketball, I've shot hundreds of games at the NBA level, hundreds, right? 5 years of shooting the NBA, 5 years of shooting the Lakers. When I would go to a basketball game, I could tell you every position in the arena to be successful. And if you are a Little Rock and it's your first time shooting a game, you're just not going to get the same level of shots. That's why like Andy Bernstein is able to, every single game, he gets the best shots in the arena, because he's a specialist. He knows exactly where to be. He's anticipating the action. That's just how it happens.
Yeah. And if you're a generalist, you just end up attracting the lower paying clients, because you do so many different things, but you don't specialize in one specific thing.
God, they're the worst.
And on top of that, you touched on it, but if you're a generalist, marketing yourself and your services just becomes a lot harder, and you're all over the place. When you don't have a specific thing that you're focused on, you're like, what do I make content about, and how do I market myself? Because I do this thing, but I also do this thing, and I also do this thing. When you do one thing specifically, you know, you shot basketball for a very long time. I did concerts for a very long time. When I was heavy into touring, a lot of my content was based around concerts specifically, and my marketing was so easy. I was able to land a lot more concert photography and video gigs because all of my marketing was about that niche.
Makes it so much easier to stand out. And that's why specialists win, right? Yeah. Because immediately as I say their name, or if like you're thinking about a soda, I'm sure we can all think of the one soda brand that pops into your brain because of their positioning, right? Yeah. It's literally it all falls under these different categories and the things that we're talking about today. But a specialist, it makes you stand out, right? Yeah. For example, I've been on a shoot multiple times in LA with this Bolt camera arm, right?
Yes.
Every single time, it's the same person that shows up. He is the master at the Bolt camera arm, and I've been on 4 separate shoots. He gets paid boatloads of money, probably way more money than a standard camera operator, because it's such a specialized product. He's the only one that knows how to command this robot to move from here to here in 3 seconds. And so when a shoot does come up and they're like, oh, we need that camera robot arm, they're going to call this one specific guy. I believe his name is Simon. And it's so crazy to think about that. I go on a set, I'm like, oh my God, Simon's here again. And it's this Bolt robot arm, because he's the best at it and he knows how to talk to it. So he's a specialist. He's carved out a very specific niche lane. Even there's another person I can think of. There's a fella in LA who does rollerblading on he's a DP that rollerblades. Every single commercial spot that requires you to be using rollerblades, who are they going to call? They're going to call that guy. And I can even just think, like, thinking of it, I'm like, that's the guy to call.
Not only are they going to think of him first, but he's able to charge a premium price because he's the only guy or the best guy at filming while on roller skates. So the reason why specialists win is because you stand out immediately. When a company needs a specific type of photographer, videographer, they think of you first.
DP, whatever, yeah.
And second, you're able to charge a lot more because they might come to you and say, you can go for any niche, right? So you can have
FPV pilot, whatever.
Concert photography or video, hotel, hospitality, food, gyms, any niche, wedding. If you are a specialist and you do that one thing incredibly well, you're able to charge a premium price and attract higher paying clients because you do that one thing the best. And when they come to you and say, oh, I need you to shoot this thing, you're like, okay, great. My rate is this. Oh, why are you so much more expensive than said other person? Because this other guy shoots a bunch of different things. I specialize in weddings or foods or concerts, and I'm the best at that.
You'd be surprised thinking, like, when I did start really raising my rates much higher than what they're at, but like besides the 400 or 500 mark, when you're in that range, damn near every single time they do try to penny pinch you.
Yeah.
And once you're at a more premium level of a client, you don't know what happens when you send over your bid for 15,000 or for 20,000. If you own an agency, you have a team, they just say, sounds good. Or they say, we need it to be at this number. There's no back and forth bullshit of like, take this down. Like, can we 50% this? That doesn't happen anymore. And you're no longer competing on price because they know there's a reason why they're paying you. For the other day, we did a shoot. I can't name the brand and we're under NDA, but it was like $13,000 for two 30-second videos. Okay. So $13,000, 2 30-second videos. You might be sitting there thinking, oh my God, that's so much money. It's even crazier because brands are getting 10 times as much as that. Bigger brands, bigger agencies for bigger clientele. Why? Because those people are coming through and they have such a dialed process and a dialed system. And that's where we want to get one day, is charging that much money for a 30-second spot or a 15-second spot, because you know they're not going to mess it up. They're perfectionists and they get the job done every single time. That's like the trust thing that you're talking about. Like,
exactly.
It's so much easier to get referrals when you're the best. Same thing when you are doing concerts. Your stuff is at such a high level. They see you working with a high quality caliber client, right? You're working with a touring DJ duo who's some of the best in their game. So then other clientele see their stuff and go, oh my God, we want that type of stuff. And they call you, and it ends up just becoming a flywheel of engagement and a flywheel of people coming into you because they're like, oh, concert guy, that Kostas guy works for Loud Luxury. We should try to hire him for this.
Trust also comes into play when clients have seen that you've done the same thing more than one time. You know what I'm saying? Like,
facts.
If you're real or your portfolio is, maybe one concert, you've shot a gym, you've also shot a wedding, like if it's all over the place, as opposed to you have 1 minute of just banger sports videos or banger concerts, or you have, you've worked with 10 different clients in the restaurant hospitality industry. The trust is there because it's like, oh, he hasn't just done it once. Like, this photographer or videographer has shot this specific thing multiple different times. I know I can trust him to get the shot.
You know what car companies look for when they're trying to bid directors for car commercials?
Somebody who has shot cars
Someone
before.
who's probably pretty damn good at shooting a car and knows how to move those cameras and the different moves that it should be having and how fast they should be going.
So that's another thing, is like each niche of photography or videography has nuances.
For sure.
And when you get into the higher level, higher caliber of brands and companies, those nuances you need to know.
Yeah, 100%. And that, I mean, those are the things that make them the best, right? And if you just threw someone random into said mix, they're not going to do as well, because there's all these little random things that you've learned and failed on or had a mentor teach you that stop that from happening.
Absolutely.
And then you don't make the same mistakes. Or like, there's a bazillion nuances and a bazillion rules that can be broken in filmmaking and content creation, whatever it may be. And you don't know until you do it, put your 1,000 hours in.
Yeah, absolutely. We have an example of a generalist versus a specialist positioning wise. So videographer number one might say, if they're pitching like a fitness brand, right?
Okay.
I shoot everything: real estate, weddings, music videos, and fitness content. This leads the brand to think they don't specialize in fitness, so why should I hire them?
You're a little rock.
You're a little rock. Versus,
Give me a big rock.
okay, Big Rock's going to say, I create high converting fitness content for brands looking to grow their online presence and increase sales.
I'm bought in.
You're bought in.
I'm handing my credit card over as you're saying it.
Yeah.
Because you're like, this is the person for me. Even, it was funny because the other day, even with our positioning for Blue Stripe, I'm starting to just understand it more because I've been talking about positioning for quite a while, but until you're really in the game, because my first production company ever, I would say it was so much more wide to what we're trying to do. And we struggled with this. Like we failed. We ultimately didn't succeed because of these things that we're telling you right now. This is easily $10,000 in shit that we're telling you today. So I really hope that you lock in with your pen and paper because it's just expensive mistakes that we've had to make, LLC fees that I'm not getting back because that company didn't make it. And it's just part of the battle, right? Like we talked to an agency the other day, you get on the phone with them, you tell them what you do in your elevator pitch and they're like, oh my God, when their eyes light up, we're doing this exact same thing. We're looking for a production company to help us make that stuff happen. It's like I don't have to like explain myself. Yeah. The work, if you make good work at a high level, when you get on the phone with them, they're like, okay, these are brands that we know, brands that we've heard of, right? And let's say you're just starting out and you don't have relationships with these huge brands, which you're not, like I didn't, right? You start making spec things and then you just explain that to them. Like, these are examples of things that we've done. This is a crew of 5 people. Like, this is what we're capable of doing. We want to make a relationship with you guys so you can see it. And then once they work with you once, if you knock it out of the park and they trust you, bada bing, bada boom, you're going to keep getting called back. And that's like the beauty of it, when they keep calling you for the things because you crushed what you said you were going to do.
Now, if you're hearing us talk about positioning and specialization and niching down, you're like, I just don't know what my specialization is. I don't know what my niche is, or maybe I don't even know what I want to niche down and I'm shooting a bunch of different things. A few questions to ask yourself would be, 1, what type of work do I actually love to do? Number 2, what industries have high budgets? So commercial brands, sports, luxury, hospitality.
That are growing as well. Think about that.
Number 3 would be, what type of clients pay well and need consistent content? And number 4 would be, who do I already have connections with or past experience in?
I met someone actually when I was on vacation, and they owned one of the biggest fast food production companies in the whole US, right? They do Super Bowl stuff every year. They did do stuff this year. I don't want to name the company, but I'm just going to explain what is very interesting about what they were saying. I met the founder and he's like, fast food is one of these things where we can get stuff cranked out within the week, where a lot of other commercial stuff, like we're dealing with so many talent budgets. He goes, it's all for the most part in a studio, and they have all these like hydraulic rigs that make stuff happen. But they're specialists is where my point where I'm going with this. So if you were Taco Bell, McDonald's, Subway, when you think, oh, we have a new commercial, do you want to go with someone who doesn't shoot fast food all the time and they're like, oh, we do this light and bright style? No, you're going to go with the people who crush the fast food stuff. You want to make it so easy that a 3rd grader should be able to read it on your website and be like, oh, that's what they do really well. That's their thing. And you'll be so much more successful. I can already hear it now. We're going to get DMs and people are going to say, I'm going to feel limited, like just doing one thing. What do you have to say to the rocks that are going to feel limited?
Try to not look at niching down as a life sentence. It's just a starting point. And what I mean by that is, you don't have to just shoot a little mic drop.
Yeah.
You don't have to just shoot one thing. And if you pick a niche and you're like, I also want to shoot other things, great. I'm not telling you gotta like only ever shoot one thing. But what we're saying is, if you have a niche and you're specialized in said specific niche, you're just going to be able to attract higher paying and better clients that you're going to really love working with.
I mean, also look at the two of us, right? I started in sports.
Yes.
That was the main thing I was doing. And then I expanded into doing social for like lots of different stuff. And then I'm doing personal content for some of these bigger brands. But now I've seen kind of this cross section of like lifestyle and sports, and doing content for some of these brands that are like in that athletic space. Like a Nike Swim is a great example. They're not really swimming. This is just more showcasing their stuff. It's more like editorial vibes, but our content still has a nice little cross section here of being in that like athletic space, athleisure space. And you kind of cross it with lifestyle, and we're able to really make some awesome stuff for these different brands.
Me personally, you've heard us talk about Monarch, which is the gym that me and Fig work out at, and I do social media content for them. Now, I don't particularly love shooting gym stuff. I just really like working with Monarch particularly. And I'm starting an agency myself. And when I was thinking about the positioning that I want, because I really want to do more hospitality, right? And like lifestyle and travel stuff. And I'm like, but I'm shooting so much great content with Monarch, but I don't know if it necessarily fits that niche of like gym specific content fits within maybe the positioning of this agency. But when I reframed my thinking around it as oh, Monarch's actually a premium luxury brand that just happens to fall under the health and wellness space. Now my positioning as an agency is I'm a social first agency that works with premium and luxury brands within the hospitality, travel, lifestyle, and wellness space. I don't want to have an agency where I'm like just shooting gyms, right? But how can I reframe my thinking of that client where, dude, the gym costs $2,000 a month and you get a personal trainer and it's all in one thing. It's a very high-end premium brand. You can either think of it as like a gym or you can reframe the positioning as it's a wellness club and it's a premium luxury brand. And that way now I can fit that and it fits into my positioning as an agency. So that's basically our tip number 2, which is focus on a niche client instead of a niche service.
What does that mean?
Basically, instead of limiting it to what you do, focus on who you serve. So instead of, like we just said, instead of, oh, I only shoot gyms, I can say, oh, I actually work with premium and luxury brands. That way I have Monarch and I can also have other brands in other niches.
Perfect synergy. Biggest takeaway here is that niching down isn't going to limit you. It's actually going to put you into a better position to actually work with the clients that you want to work with, not these low penny pinching. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. We don't want you guys working there. We want you working with the big dogs who value your time, value your energy, and you're actually going to make the work that makes you happy.
That's just step number 1. We're just talking about positioning. Let's go to step number, I feel like we're spitting some
What's
game.
number 2?
Step number 2 is that you want to create work that attracts the right clients. A lot of times, a big reason why you're not working with the brands that you want to be working with is because your portfolio doesn't align or doesn't have the same type of content that that brand is looking for.
The best way to do that, though, is to make a spec commercial. Like, I want to play ball with these commercial brands, but make it on the phone, right? So we're making a spec piece for Wrangler right now, which should be pretty sweet because it's going to involve horses. It's going to be very fun. But I want this piece on the portfolio. So what do? We invest in it and we go out and make it. Bada bing, bada boom. Stop waiting for them to hit you up. They're not just going to magically hit you up because you're sitting there on LinkedIn scrolling. Like, you got to have pieces. And I also look at these spec pieces as things that I can leverage because I'll have BTS from it. I'll have more photos that I can post. I'll have a video that I can post. I can talk about it. I can send it on LinkedIn to 25 people that work at the brand and say, hey, I made this. What do you think about it? Is there anything opening up in the next few months that we could have a conversation about?
Brands are pretty stupid. Unless they see proof in the pudding, they're not going to hire you. Clients don't hire based off of potential. They need to see that you actually can deliver on what you're promising, right? And if you're not shooting what you want to be shooting, you just go make a spec ad. I think a big mistake I did early on is I felt like I needed permission to shoot something. Like, I felt like I needed to be hired before I could shoot said thing. A spec ad, you don't need any permission. You just go out, you think of an idea, you get some friends together, and you go make something that you love. And that way, you now have a new portfolio piece. You also shouldn't look at a spec ad as free work. You should look at it as an investment in yourself because it's a way that you can build your portfolio and then in turn show clients that you can do what they're looking for.
And nothing changes from stuff that people are paying me for these spec ads. Like, we're still writing a script. Sharif wrote this beautiful script for the Wrangler thing. He went and pulled a bunch of references. So we have different references. I've been watching tons of Wrangler ads, trying to get inspiration for how the brand normally looks and feels. Like, all of these little things are what's going to make the video really well done. We're still going to have a shot list. We're not just going to like show up to a random field with a horse and some Wrangler jeans and be like, we're going to figure this out on the day. That's just not how the big rocks do it. Like, you look at the work that these huge production companies and big ad agencies are producing. There's so many people that are touching the work. It's like, that's just how it's done. Dude. Yeah. You got to look at the blueprint. Even we're shooting a campaign for this other brand. I can't say it. We're still under NDA.
Flex.
But I'm going to shoot the thing in this living room and I'm going to make it just like Nate and Dylan did for their Super Bowl commercial, right? That way we have a one-to-one mock and we can say, okay, maybe that whip's not going to work, or maybe this is how we should do this push-in shot. And that way, when the day actually does come, none of it is new. We've already filmed it. We've already edited it. We know there's 16 shots or 18 shots or whatever. That's how you do it. That's how you make the best possible stuff happen.
So when it comes to spec ads, 2 things. One, treat it as if it's an actual shoot that you're getting paid for. Take it seriously. Second, use the gear you already have. Bring on some friends that want to help out. And you don't have to, you don't have to put $10,000, $20,000 into a spec ad. I made a spec ad last year with Jay. He directed it, I shot it, and we spent maybe like $500. And then I actually ended up only really spending probably $250 because I returned the bag that I like shot. And then the last tip is that your spec ad should look and feel like the brand you're shooting. It needs to align. So you should do research. If you're shooting a Wrangler ad, like you said, go back and take a look at what does their content look like? What does it feel like? If you make a spec ad for a brand that doesn't feel like it was made for that brand, there's just no point. Like, it doesn't align.
Yeah, there's no point. You should make it so it should look like they could just post on their Instagram tomorrow and it would fit perfectly well.
One tip I would say is if you are making a spec ad, or really any production that you're doing, spec ad or paid, bring somebody on to shoot BTS, because that is gold for marketing. The amount of times I've used shots from that away spec ad, the BTS stuff of me, using a camera and shooting it, that is almost just as valuable as the actual spot, because yes, you need to make the spot, but you also have to market yourself as, photographer or videographer, and having videos and photos allows clients to see the process, what you're like on set, and also just allows you to make content around you doing the thing that you love.
Step 3, we're talking about crafting an offer that clients are actually going to buy. This is super important, because if you just get on the phone, this DM was this week, someone just sent me this. They're like, I got on the phone. I got nervous because they asked me about how much it was going to cost. They got off the phone, still don't have any information on what their budget was. So we need to have a system of the thing that you're actually going to sell. When I was starting out, I'll give you an example. We don't do this anymore. I don't send 3 packages to these different clients, because we're just bidding usually on one piece of campaign. So I'm not sending there's a 10, a 20, and a 30K option or something. We're not doing that. It's just this is how much this is going to cost, and it's line itemized, broken down. But when I was starting out and I was pitching smaller brands, social media packages, I would always send it in 3. Okay. I would make sure that the bottom price was kind of mid. It didn't have a ton of fun stuff, because I didn't want them to pick the bottom one. I wanted them to pick the middle one usually. And I'd make the middle one substantially cooler than the bottom price. And then for the price of the third option, I'd make it way, way, way higher. And it was a lot more work. So I was like, if they pick this, we're going to have to give them a lot more stuff, but there's high chance that they don't pick this. More often than not, they would either mostly pick this middle option. If I had to take a guesstimate on it, probably 75% of the time, but then no one ever picked the little option because it wasn't appealing. It looked pretty crappy. You'd see the middle one and they'd be like, oh my God, I want the middle ones to clear. But then some of them are just the big spenders, guys like you, guys that like the nice shit.
The whales
of the videography content space, dude, photo space. They pick the big one. And then you're like, oh my God, I just closed this whale actually by pricing this the way I just did. So Alex Hormozi gives a great example of this with frozen yogurt brands and how they price out their small, middle, and large option.
Okay.
For the most part. If you want to sell more of this big option, I put the middle price a little higher, closer to that bigger price. And they're like, oh my God, for just a little bit more, I get to actually choose the bigger number. And I've done this subconsciously I read it in a book somewhere. I don't remember what business book I read in when I was in college, but that's just how I went about everything. I pitched a sorority. I'd have 3 different pricing options, and that's how we did it. And I would typically use that middle option as my one that I wanted. But there was some times where I switched it later on. I'd put the middle price a lot closer to the big price, and I'd sell much more of the bigger option. And then it started to kind of flip my thinking for how you have these numbers laid out. So when you're starting out, that's something to think about, is having these different packages for them to pick from. But the big thing about what I just said is it's a process. You're not just like, oh, it's going to be $500. Once you do this long enough in a specific space, you'll start to understand the nuances of oh, I should probably have a revisions number in these different pitches that we're doing, because if I don't, then I'll spend 5 months doing revisions on a project, and I've done that before and I never got paid for 5.5 months. So make sure that you have that in the contract. The revision number is just little things that you can mess up. Have something that they actually want to buy. They buy on process, right? So I was talking to a friend at an agency, and they have this specific thing that they sell. I'm not going to say what it is. Okay. I'm not going to out what their process is, but they have this thing that they sell. Okay. And it's specific to them. It's named something. And then they show case studies of what it is that they sell. And so when you get on the phone with them and they're talking about their service, oh, we have, blank, blah, blah, blah. This is the thing that we sell. And then they're like, oh, okay, what brands have done it? And they show the brands they've done. They have a case study, and they're like, this is the results of what they've got from it. If you can get things like that, brands will pay you big money for those things. Okay. That's what we need. We need case studies. We need to assure them this is the thing that we made. It actually works. And from there, this is what happens. If you go into any gym, I used to live in I lived in Orange County, California, and there was lots of gyms in this town. There'd be like a 24, an LA, and like a Choose and another few little brands. All the time, every part of the year, because my friends had passes at them, so I get to go to all of them every time of the year. It was some sort of different thing on the outside on like a board or something, and be like, oh, we're doing the 6-week summer get fit thing, whatever, right? It'd be the same exact thing in the winter. It'd just be repackaged into like a different set of words, and they were always running some sort of sale. Like even the 24-hour down here in Santa Monica that I was once a member at, they're like, we're doing a thing where you get the first month for free if you sign up for a year. For a Super Bowl or something. That was like what they were doing. The Super Bowl weekend.
Don't you want to get ripped for the Super Bowl?
For the Super Bowl, I'm like, sure. Yeah. And then I remember buying for the year and I got the first month for free. That same thing is still a thing. It just packaged in a totally different type of way. So for whatever thing it is that you sell, whether you're like, oh, we do food or we do beverage or hospitality, whatever, have something that is your specific thing. You don't need to know it right now, but be thinking about, oh, this is our gold package. We come in for a day, we do 20 photos, we do 5 different reels, and it costs $10,000. And that's our main thing that we're selling.
I think what's important about what you're saying, though, is that the brands aren't paying for a pretty video or beautiful photos.
No, everyone does that.
They care about results.
Yeah.
And so if you can pitch yourself and craft an offer where you're focused on the value that you're providing to said client based off of results. And like you said, if you have those testimonials and case studies to show like, hey, we've worked with this brand and this brand and this brand, and this is the results we've been able to bring them, it makes it so much easier for the brand to say yes to you because you're focusing on the value that you're providing them as opposed to just being like, look at how pretty these photos and videos I made.
That was the problem when I was starting is I didn't understand that these brands have to get like an ROI, right? It's not just like, oh, let me just give you this stuff and I'm going to give you 10 things and your organic's going to grow. It just doesn't work like that. A lot of these brands that aren't using paid advertising have to be using paid advertising. So either you find someone on Fiverr or on Upwork that knows how to run paid ads that's in another country so you can get a cheaper rate on that, or you find someone in the States or your country in Canada, wherever you're from, you find someone that knows how to run Facebook ads or Google ads or whatever it is that's going to help that business actually grow with this beautiful stuff that you make. And the weirdest thing about all of that too is you don't know what's going to work. So you think you know what's going to work. You have an idea like, oh, I think this content's going to work, but it might be completely opposite and another style of stuff might work. So you're constantly testing and constantly learning with your Facebook person or with your Google ads person, whatever it's going to look like, to make the stuff better. So then it actually gives them an ROI. Because if their business grows, I'm telling you guys, if there was a machine, me and Coach were literally talking about this yesterday. If I gave you a machine, okay, and I put $10,000 in the machine and it shit out $50,000, I would do that every single day of the week. I would give the machine $10,000 and it would bring me $50,000. Yeah. That's what you have to be thinking about with these paid ads or with the stuff that you're making for them. It's like, if they pay me $5,000, are they going to make back $8,000? Or are they going to make back $7,000 or whatever that thing is? The higher that you can get that ROI for them, the more likely they're going to be wanting to pay you more money every single month consistently.
If you can focus on the outcome and what value you can deliver to the client, that one simple mindset shift will land you such bigger paydays because now you go from, you're not just selling videos, you're selling an actual outcome that the business will then in turn make more money from. And that's what they're hiring you for. They don't really care about how pretty your photos or videos are. They don't care
what camera, they don't care what lens.
Exactly. They care about making money. So shift your mindset to that and you'll make a lot more money.
Step number 4 is pricing. How should people price?
Probably by the hour, right?
That's not how you price. You're not going to charge by the hour. We're going to charge off of a value-based pricing metric, okay? And I first heard this from Chris Do, and I learned where he learned it from, and it was a guy named Ronald Baker. So I bought his book. It was an expensive book, and I will share with you a lot of the learnings in this book today, and you can apply this to anything that you guys are doing in your businesses, okay? So in the book, Ron is an accountant, okay? And during his firm, while he was at his firm, everyone used to charge by the hour in the accounting world. So you got a billionaire, you got a guy that makes 10 million, you got a guy that makes $50,000. They're charging them all by the hour. Okay. What then Ron kind of discovered was some of these clients were a pain in the ass. Some of them were always calling him. Some of them were asking for more things in their books. And it was just becoming a nightmare for some of these specific clients. So he took a step back and was like, oh my gosh, we need to be charging off of a value-based pricing metric. Other industries are doing this. Like, I think we should be doing this not by the hour, but by a value-based metric, which essentially means I'm not charging you based on how many hours it takes me to work on it. Because if we do that, let's say I just did a job for a humongous brand. Okay, let's just use Nike because I love Nike University. So let's say we did a project for Nike and it took me an hour to do. Okay, but it would take, let's say Coast isn't as fast an editor as me, and it takes you 10 hours to do the same exact job. We both produce a great quality video, right? Should I be penalized for making the video in an hour?
No. And that's the thing.
That's the thing, right?
When you get better at doing your job, it takes you less time to do said job. You should not be penalized for doing the job quicker and better than somebody else because it's taking them more time to edit the video. Totally.
And when you start thinking about a value-based pricing metric, if you have a client, I've talked to people about this in the DMs before. They're like, yo, I have this client who's a pain in the ass and let's say it's $2,000 a month. We had people in our last DCA have this exact same problem I'm telling you about. Okay. So in the Dream Client Accelerator cohort last time, there was someone who had this client, it was like $1,000 or $2,000 a month, and they're giving them X amount of deliverables. And they're like, they're a pain in my ass. They're always annoying, calling me. I go, what if we doubled the price? Would you feel much more comfortable doing it? And would you probably be able to hire someone and still make more money? And they're like, yeah, I probably would. So we came up with a plan. We're like, this is what you're going to say tomorrow. You go in. Sure enough, they were like, okay, that's fine. And they magically feel a hell of a lot better working with them because it's like, cool, I'm getting more money to deal with their shit, to deal with their text messages or whatever. And Ron basically brought this methodology into accounting firms across the country. And I can tell you, it just doesn't make sense to charge the billionaire that you're saving tens of millions of dollars or however much, maybe even hundreds of millions. I don't know how that works. Not there yet. They should be charged a lot more money than the entrepreneur who makes $50,000 a year in their business. And then when you think about it going with like big brands versus small brands, right? At the end of the day, you're still making like, these production companies are making these Super Bowl commercials. They're 30 seconds long. Yeah. Right? They're maybe a minute long. Most of them are 30 seconds long. If the kid who's charging the mom and pop shop 30-second videos got hired magically, he's magically an insane director now to do a Super Bowl commercial, you're not charging Pepsi the same price you're charging the mom and pop company for a 30-second video because this 30-second video to Pepsi matters so much more. It's going to be on a global scale for tens of millions of people all across the country. It's just apples to oranges, dude. It just doesn't make sense.
You charge based on the problem you solve, not time spent.
Where'd you get that?
The notes.
Okay. That was a great line. It's so true. Oh, there it is.
Oh, dude.
Come on, snap, crackle, pop.
But it is so true. Think about your pricing as the value that you're providing to said client. If you're providing them a video that they're going to run as an ad that is going to generate them $100,000+ in revenue, that video is worth a hell of a lot more money to them than somebody else who maybe isn't running paid media on it and is just using it for organic. You price on the value that you provide and the problem that you're solving, not based on how long it takes you to create the work.
If I had a business owner, okay, that had ads, you're giving them 10 ads a month, okay? And they're making $1 million off of these 10 ads and they're investing $70,000 into you to actually go make this content. I'd say that's a pretty damn good investment.
Absolutely.
Anybody would gladly do that. I would do that. If you were like, oh, if you invest with me $70,000 and you make $1 million and it's guaranteed and we're doing it, we tested it, we've learned this system that works every single time for you, everyone's going to do that 10 out of 10 times. Sure. They're going to do it. So you need to be thinking about that for actually crafting your offer, is making sure that it's going to work. And the only way that you do that is by practicing it and refining your process to see if it actually works for these brands. One thing that we do right now that's interesting is when we send off like ads that are being ran for paid, if you have, someone from their team that's running them, they'll give you like a report on like what's doing well if you ask for it. And so learning that stuff and saying like, oh, this hook did really well. And then, okay, we should probably double down next month on said hook. Or this type of video that you did in this lighting worked really well for paid advertising. Let's triple down on that next month and see if anything changes. Let's change the color and see if that changes anything. You have to be constantly paying attention to that. It's no longer just like, let's just make a pretty video. Yeah. Because that's what it used to be when I was coming up, was just like, let's just make them pretty videos. But they don't get anything out of that. Yeah. So it doesn't matter anymore.
The key is to know the ROI of your work. And I think when you don't have a way to explain and demonstrate the ROI that you can bring a business, that's when you get into undercharging as a creator. Because if you can't explain and showcase the value that you're bringing, with a direct ROI to this business, then you get into the like, okay, I guess I'll just charge $1,000 for this video because like that sounds like a good amount. But when you get into like the actual ROI, how much value you are providing to this business, that's when you can charge a lot more as a creative. Let's move on to step number 5, which is generating leads. And there are 4 proven strategies to generate leads. Give them to me.
Okay, so we have organic content, which is like you posting things for free on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, whatever. We have paid ads, which would be Facebook ads, TikTok ads, Google ads, right? We have warm outreach, right? Warm outbound. So we know someone's interested in our business or we get a referral from somebody, right? That would be warm. And then cold. They have no idea who we are, no idea about our services. You either call or you email them. Those are the 4 different ways that I know of. Maybe you could throw up a billboard on the 405 and try that. Unless you're a lawyer, I don't know if it's working because those are the only people that I see on the 405 freeway.
Call Jacob.
Call Jacob is up. No plug, shameless plug. He's still up there. Those are the different ways that you guys can go about this. I think a great one, most of the time when I talk to people, they're not doing any of the 4. And that's a problem.
Sure.
Usually a lot of people I feel like do one really well and then they like expand into the other one. I'll tell you what I'm doing right now, and then you can try these out for yourself. Okay. So the only one that, no, we're doing all of them. Oh, no. Okay. The only one for Blue Stripe that we're not currently doing, but I'm going to be doing in the next like 2 weeks is paid ads for the company. What we're going to do with that is we're going to try to direct them to a landing page where I can get data on whoever it is, like whatever the brand level is. So I want to work with brands that are making at least over $5 million revenue a year. Okay. Because that means if they have 10% of marketing budget, they're going to have about $500,000 to spend through all the different things they do, whether they go to trade shows, whether they do paid ads,
over the course of a year.
Over the course of a year of what they do, right? So those are the brands that I'm going to try to hit. What I'm going to be doing, this is the exact thing I'm going to do. Okay. I'm going to give it to you guys. I'm going to be developing something to have like a questionnaire to give them for free. And the people that do qualify, I'm going to try to get them on a Calendly to book a call with me. I'm going to give them a free 30-minute consultation because those brands, I know I'll be able to help. The other brands, I'll give them strategies and ideas for free, right? Because they came and they took the little questionnaire thing. It'll be like 6 questions, something super low lift that's like takes you no time at all, okay? The other thing that we're doing is I've signed up for LinkedIn Premium so I can send more messages inbound to people that I'm not connected with. So yesterday I spent like 2 hours, me and Sharif sat down and we just responded to tons of comments on LinkedIn, tons of DMs to people. And we also bought LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which I believe sounds like an ad. It's not though, I promise. For 3 months, you get to like send, for $60 a month, you can send more emails.
Okay.
So now I have his account and my account and I'm just going crazy because I can look them up on his account using Sales Navigator. And then I copy their profile and go put them into mine. And then I'll DM them directly. The other thing too with the cold outreach is you just have to try stuff. Like I think off of cold outreach, like a really good rule of thumb is like 1% to 2% of people are going to respond to you.
Yeah.
So if you respond to 100, you're likely going to get maybe 1 to 2 back. So when you think about like, oh, I responded to 20, like yesterday, I probably hit like 50 people. I'm not expecting any more than like 1 or 2 people to respond. And I think 2 people responded when I woke up. So that's great. Yeah. I got a win yesterday. But it's pretty crazy the amount of time that takes for the return on it. But it just also does take 1 or 2 people to be interested in your stuff to have a big return on that.
Going off of that, off of warm leads, something that I think every business owner should be doing, every photographer, videographer, is hitting up past clients that you've worked with every 3 to 6 months, just checking in, loved working together, would love to see if there's any synergy, any way that we can work together in the near future. So that's one. You've already worked with them, so you know that if you did a good job for them, they're probably willing and wanting to work with you again. So that's one thing. Follow-up is definitely super important. If you haven't followed up with past clients, definitely recommend doing so. The next is asking for referrals. The best marketing is just word of mouth. Because if you had success with one client and you did well with them, they probably know other people that do similar stuff to them. And if they refer you, they're vouching for you. They're like, hey, you should work with Braden or you should work with Costas because they did a great job with me for this. You should work with them because you could also use them.
It's so much easier to get a guest on the podcast when it comes from one of our friends that we've had on, rather than us just DMing cold. It's like, oh, hey, I really like these guys. They don't suck. Talk to them.
Yeah. You brought up LinkedIn. Yeah. I think LinkedIn is such a great way to find specific people who work with a brand or a business. If you take Nike, for example, the chances of you DMing Nike and you getting a job off of that are probably close to 0%.
Close to 0 for sure.
However, let's say there's a brand or a business that you want to work with. You can go on LinkedIn, look up that brand or business, and go and find either the social media manager or the marketing director, somebody that works in marketing. Find them. You can either message them on LinkedIn or you can search them up on Instagram and send them a message.
I'll tell you what not to do.
Okay.
I had someone while I was at the Lakers who DM'd or emailed me and said, hey man, notice you work and do a lot of stuff with social. I think the social sucks. You should check out my work. Don't do that. That's not good.
Yeah.
Then no one will want to work with you. So don't email someone that for sure works on the social and tell them the social sucks. I would use it as like, hey, you know, if you have any time for like a screening, I'd love to show you more of what we do, 10 or 15 minutes. Don't ask for an hour, dude. No one wants to meet for an hour. People are busy.
We also brought up generalist versus specialist. I think the same kind of goes for when you're cold outreaching and sending an email or a message is don't make it super general. Don't say, hey, I make videos. I want to work with you. Like you're just going to get ignored every single time. Be specific. 5 tips that we have when doing outreach are be specific, reach out to the right person, show them a very specific way that you can help them, have specific ideas already ready of how you can help them, and show examples of past work that align with their brand.
Organic content. What do we got?
Organic content is very important because if you have a super strong personal brand and you're posting consistent, it's like the only marketing tool you ever need, because if your personal brand and your organic content, if it's well, you're going to have an inbox full of emails. And there's a couple tips that we have. So one is obviously post consistently. You hear people say post every day, post 2 to 3 times a day.
17 times a day.
Post at whatever cadence you can replicate week after week. We all have a ton going on. Sometimes you have weeks that you can, focus a lot more on social. Try to make it a priority and stick to a cadence that you can stick with consistently. Also, we talked about BTS, showcase past work and showcase you on set. If clients come to your page and they see past work and that you are making content talking about that, what you're talking about and showcasing past work, they're going to say, oh, this guy makes really cool stuff and he knows what he's talking about. I'm going to reach out to him.
I think this is a great example of when we first met. You told me that your page was more like, kind of looked like you were an influencer.
Dude, I didn't even know what the fuck I was
doing. And people
were
like saying, oh, you're like a model. And you're like, no, I'm not a model. I'm a photographer. Mm-hmm. And you totally realigned all the content that you were posting to be more photo or video focused. And then people started to reach out to you for that stuff.
And now they're like, oh, you do photo video? I'm like, no, I'm a model. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you got to, they're just confused.
Yeah. I might take up modeling, because we've been in the gym, dude. Mm-hmm. 4 days a week, dude, lifting heavy.
That's awesome. I haven't, but that's great.
But yeah, I would say like the types of content that you can post that is going to attract the high paying clients and just more clients in general is work that you've done. You can talk about case studies. You can say like, hey, we just wrapped up this video for this client. It, got this many views. We generated this many sales for them. That can get kind of sticky because you might not want to put out like personal information of certain clients, but there's a way to showcase results that you've gotten for other clients without like putting all their business out there. So that's the second. A third is educational posts, tips, tricks, talking about like that, what you're talking about, explaining, photography and video more in depth, and then just personal brand content and bringing yourself into your content.
Or even like what's working for the brands that you're working with.
Yes.
I think that.
Yeah, you've been doing a lot of those on LinkedIn. I like those videos.
Dude, that's what I'm trying to hit is the people that are working at the brand. Yeah. So I want to show that I know what I'm talking about and that, hey, there's room for opportunity here. Notice too on those videos, I need to make more of them. Now I'm thinking about that, but I don't shit on the brand because you don't get there's nothing constructive that you're going to say that's like bashing them. If anything, it's just going to upset people. Like I'm telling you right now, like it would just piss me off. If I worked at the brand, I'd be like, this guy, top of the list, don't want to work with this person. Yeah. That's just rule number 1. Gas them up, rule of opportunity. Or gas them up, look for opportunity, not what they're doing wrong. Because, dude, every brand in the world has something they're doing wrong. Our brand, nothing. But other brand.
Our brand?
Nothing.
Nah, dude. We're not doing anything wrong.
Every brand has stuff that they could improve, and they all know it. They're aware.
I think the biggest thing to remember when it comes to outreach is that these tips that we're giving you aren't going to land you new clients tomorrow. But what I will say is that closed mouths don't get fed. And if you aren't doing some sort of outreach, you're just leaving money on the table.
Step 6. Everyone wants a strong personal brand, dude. You hear it. Every single person is on a podcast. Yeah.
Personal brand. Personal brand.
Get your personal brand. Build your personal brand. Do
personal
this with your personal
brand sucks.
brand. It sucks. Do this instead. All right. This is the real advice. You don't have to listen to any other pod about personal brand. Okay. We're gonna give it all to you right here.
Hell yeah.
Okay. The number one thing that you're trying to do is you're trying to show up authentic. And it took me and Kostas years and years and years of messing this up, showing up as someone we're not. And I think you have to have a certain level of life experience. Our podcast with JB Copeland that's coming out soon really talked about this a lot. You have to be so comfortable like with yourself and knowing what you stand for and the things that you want to talk about to be able to share and talk about it. Because I feel like for years I was just regurgitating what other people were saying. And I'm like,
sure,
that's smart. That thing is good. I should say that.
Yeah.
And that's what I should talk about in my stuff. And you have to go through this of kind of knowing, okay, these are the things that I have expertise in. And it takes a long time. It's not like, that's why you have people that are like 17 being like, I'm a life coach, you know? And it's like, hey, maybe not. Maybe you should experience some life before doing that. And I think that is a common thing in the personal brand landscape. So it's like, think about the things that you're interested in, think about the things that you have deeper expertise in, and think about the group of people that you can actually help. When you think about those three things, you can begin to make content around them. And really, you either educate or you entertain. Like, I feel like those are the two. I know there's another one that people say inspire, but if you're educating, you could be inspiring in some way, shape, or form with the stuff you're doing. Like, as you just live your life through the actions that you have, you will inspire people naturally. Like, people will either grow towards that or they'll be like, I'm not interested in said thing.
I think maybe a better word instead of inspiring is relatable. If you can come off as relatable on social media through your personal brand, people are just going to gravitate towards you more. I think a big thing to remember is that people buy from people. When clients are looking to hire a creator to create content for them, to take photos for them, make videos for them, they want to hire someone that they feel that they know. And the only way to do that, if you've never met them, is through showing up and showing your personality, showing your work on social media and building a personal brand for yourself. And if you feel like you're constantly, we talked about, generating leads and outbound and outreach. If you feel like that's what you constantly have to do to get new business, you just don't have a strong enough personal brand. I
think a big reason, dude, why a lot of these humongous agencies work with Vayner is because Gary is posting so much content and he's like, hey, every day we get learnings from TikTok, from Instagram, from Facebook, from Twitter, from YouTube. And they actively are putting that stuff into the content that they're making for the biggest brands in the world. It's like such a no-brainer if you're a brand and you're like, oh, why should I work with you? He's like, every single day I get so much data and feedback from what's working. And then we put those findings into the different things we're making for you guys.
When it comes to the Vayner example you just brought up, there's plenty of agencies that do exactly what Vayner does.
For sure.
It's the simple fact that Gary Vee has built a massive personal brand for himself that gets him clients that these other clients could make work for on the same level that Gary Vee's agency could. It just so happens that they're going to go with VaynerMedia because they know of Gary Vee.
And they have a connection, right? Like if a high up person in a company, a 2 or 3 or 4, even a 1 sees Gary's content and enjoys it, they're going to get on the phone and say, hey, we should take our business to Vayner. Yeah. I like Gary's message. I want to work with Gary. Like, there it is. That is the personal brand blueprint. And he's so authentically himself. Love him or hate him. There's another interesting thing too. If you're bringing people that like don't like what you're saying, you're probably doing something right. Because the group of people that does like you really is going to enjoy it because you're being who you are. You're being your authentic self. Like, people probably hate that he cusses. Tons of people probably despise that he cusses. He doesn't care, dude, because he's like, yo, I'm being me. This is exactly who I show up as. I show up as myself. You don't like me. You don't have to like me. I'm not mad at you because you don't like me.
You bringing up Gary Vee, I think it can be easy to think like he's got millions of followers. Like, how could I ever reach that level, right? Or you might be in a big market in LA or New York and you're like, fuck, there's so many people out there. One, you don't need millions of followers for this to work for you. If you have a strong personal brand, you could be crushing it in your small town that you live in. But having a strong personal brand is the fastest way to separate yourself from the competition, because people know who you are through your social content. And just like if you specialize in said specific thing, I mean, at least for me, like when I think of, if I want to hire somebody on social, like or if I want to hire somebody else for a gig, the first thing that I look for, I go on Instagram or TikTok and I look at who I follow or who I know that does the same stuff. And you could be that person for said brand. If you have a strong personal brand and people know what you do through the content that you put out, you're just going to generate leads from other businesses that need what you can provide.
I mean, this has been a thing for decades. Like
totally.
in a teeny tiny town,
yeah.
Instead of it being on Instagram, it's on Facebook. Or before social media was even a thing, it was just by the word of mouth of what someone thought of your character, what they thought of your business. Like when I go back to my family reunion in that teeny tiny town in Preston, Idaho, there is a singular family that does the barbecue for like all the people's families that like come and do like a family reunion. And why? Because they have a great brand in said area, because they do a great barbecue every time. So when someone asks, oh, who'd you guys hire? You're gladly going to say this family did the barbecue for you. Yeah. And like you could take that from social and you can dumb it down to not even having any sort of like digital brand, but they just have a great personal brand, because when they come, they're in a great mood, they're super excited, the food's great, you're going to recommend them to other people. And like, so personal branding goes down to like all the little things, not just online.
Someone who really stands out to me, who I think has a great personal brand and also specializes, is Evan Tanaka. He crushes it in food photography. Most food photographers are just posting their photos that they take of food. He's doing that, but he's also showing the behind the scenes of how he sets up and gets every shot. And then he's also talking to the camera. And so he gets to work with a lot of really big brands, because he not only produces incredible work, but he has a strong personal brand, and he brings his personality into his videos, and brands see that and be like, not only is his work incredible, but he seems like someone that we want to work with.
There it is. And every time they're going to call Evan. Yeah. Some practical advice for Instagram and for LinkedIn or any platform that you're sharing your stuff on is to have your bio optimized to tell people what you do right off the bat. So like if you go to my LinkedIn, you're going to see I'm the host of the 505 podcast. I own Blue Stripe. And so they're immediately be like, oh, can I visit your website? And it's so easily clickable right there, right when you land. Same thing on my Instagram. It's like, it builds proof. This is where I used to work. This is where I graduated from college at Go Ducks. Go Ducks. Then you see, oh, he used to work for the Lakers. Oh, this is the brand that he's doing right now. He's starting Blue Stripe. He has a podcast. Then you click on the podcast, and the podcast is doing pretty well. Keep going up, please. The podcast is doing well. Okay, great. We can trust them to create this social content. I got hit up the other day to like run a podcast, and it's pretty easy to say, oh yeah, I can help you with that. Because if you look, our podcast is doing well, or what they want, that's what they want, right?
I'll give you a perfect example for me.
Okay.
For personal brand of how it generated a lead for me.
Okay.
The podcast that we specifically did with JT Barnett. Okay. The old marketing manager for Monarch followed JT, saw that he was on our podcast, checked out our podcast, found me from that episode specifically, and then saw that I do social media content, hit me up to do content for Monarch.
Shake
and
and
that's
bake.
all through personal brand content.
Shake and bake.
Come on.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
Right there. That's a great example of that.
And the thing is with personal brand too, is like you never know who's going to see your stuff.
I think Tyler Babin gave a fantastic example of this when he was on our show. So Tyler used to work for Gary Vee. He was like Gary Vee's videographer. Then when he left, he did this series called 24 Hours With, and he would basically go like hang out with business owners, entrepreneurs, and make them an awesome little mini doc for 24 hours hanging out with them. Hassan Minhaj's team saw one of those 24 Hours With videos, one that Tyler wasn't even like over the moon ecstatic about.
He said it was one of his like worst performing videos.
Which is crazy. Sees said video and is like, oh my God, we want some style of content like this. Tyler's like sold a movie. Babin sold a movie with Hassan. They've done so many cool things, like head of brand, creative director, does all these awesome things together with him. And that all started because of the personal brand content that Babin was putting out.
Yeah.
How crazy of a story just off of the YouTube video. Like a YouTube video you're not even thinking anything of. You have to post these things that you feel passionate about because you never know who's watching.
Moving right along to step number 7, pitching like a pro.
Okay.
You're great at pitching.
That really means a lot.
Yeah.
Because I've failed a lot and I've lost a lot of pitches. I will tell you what really helps a lot is I got to give Sharif a ton of credit here. Sharif makes some of the most beautiful decks I've ever seen. And when you're pitching higher budget work, you can't just show up on a phone call and say, this is going to cost this. And they got to be able to see themselves in the work. Yeah. So First of all, they come to you with like some sort of brief. A lot of agencies, it's called like bidding, and they reach out to 3 different companies, 3 different production companies, or even 3 different agencies if you're pitching directly to the brand to try to win the brand's work, right? And with that, they'll give you a brief like, hey, we're trying to reach Gen Z and this is like our slogan or whatever. Then you interpret said information and you put your ideas onto a deck and you're selling that stuff back to them. I think one thing that people get wrong in these pitches and all this stuff is they like take it way too long. Like they just draw out the conversation so long. Like I don't want to talk any more than we don't need to talk. I want to showcase what we're trying to do. They already know our expertise. Like you've already hopped on a call and you have like this blueprint for how it is that you do the thing. Oh, this is our capabilities, right? Every single company out there in the world should have what's called a capabilities deck. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's what you do. What can you guys do? What is the thing that you guys basically sell? So it doesn't need to be anything crazy, like 7 to 10 slides. I always even open it up with like, oh, here's how we met. Like they're buying into the story of why your brand exists, which is why many of you probably buy from certain clothing brands is you're like, oh, I bought into the story of why the brand sits in said market or whatever. So think about that. Think about what it is that your brand story is and like why you guys exist. The other thing too that I think about on these sales calls that is super, super important is if I can't help them with the thing, we tell them that. We're not like trying to win every single, obviously I'd love to take business. I want business. My whole goal is to have $1 million agency, right? But if I can't help them right off the bat and there's not any synergy here, like I don't think I can solve their problem. They're like, oh, we're looking for, for this influencer talent agency. That's not what we do. So I'm going to tell them, hey, that's not what we do, but I have a friend that does that. Or if I don't, I just can't help you guys. I'm really sorry. But if you guys are looking for this one day, I'd love to be in conversation. I always try to plug them though with someone if I know someone to help them. Because 1, I want to see our friends eat. And 2, it's like, this is great karma. It's just giving your friends jobs if you can't fulfill said thing. So that's another really important thing. And it's your job to ask the right questions, to learn from them and say like, where is it that you guys are trying to go? Because they might come to you for whatever the problem is they think is the problem. And by you asking tons of questions, you might uncover something else. It's like, oh, you came to us for a video, but really you guys need like a brand shoot and we need to get you assets that go with this campaign. And we need, you guys need more short form. You guys are trying to run ads and you guys don't have enough of it to run ads. Like that's your job, is to ask so many questions and learn and be actually curious. Because if they just come to you and you say, perfect, like let's sign you up for this thing, it might not be the thing that actually moves the needle forward for them. And then you might have made money, but they're not experiencing the results that they wanted. And it just isn't meshing because you didn't ask the right questions.
Oftentimes brands think they know what they want and they're going to come to you and say like, I want this one thing, but they actually need something else. And like you said, it's your job to like be honest with them and say, I know that you want this one thing, but actually I think you're better off going with this. Oh, they think they want a 2-minute commercial, but actually it's better if we do, if we split that story up into 2 30s, 2 15s, and maybe a few 6s. And this is going to perform better on social because it's actually more assets. It's vertical versus horizontal, and it's social specific. Something that I love that you guys talk about on your pitch is you take what you learned at the Lakers and you're bringing it into the other brands. And I feel like when brands hear you guys say that, they're like, oh shit, that's great.
Yeah. It also is talking about your experience, right? It's not like I didn't work there for 5 years. I didn't soak up like all this crazy knowledge of what it is that they do super well. And when you work with really cool brands, I urge you guys to like ask questions to people that are of the director level at brands that you get the opportunity to work with, because you'll learn so much from like their experience just by asking good questions for the things that they've been doing really well.
You brought up a pitch deck and how important they are. What are a few things, what are a few mistakes you see beginners making when they're creating pitch decks and when they're pitching these brands?
They're just so ugly. They are so ugly. Oh my God.
Similar to how a spec ad should be on brand with the brand, your pitch deck should be on brand with the brand that you're pitching.
For sure. Yeah. I think that it should look and feel like kind of their website or like a campaign that they've done recently or something that they're fresh in their mind. Because if I showed a company that was very like light and bright, the most like dark, it was all black and gray, they'd be like, this isn't us. And they're not going to be able to see themselves in the work. Every time that a company goes to your website or your Instagram or your page, it's a touch point, right? And so if all of those touch points aren't in alignment for what you're selling or like the thing that is part of your business, I feel like it's like we're trying to make this line into like having a handshake together and like working together, right? If everything is all jumbled, it makes that handshake a lot harder to actually make happen and like for this work to be seen by the life of day, right? To actually be seen. So every time that you get a touch point with them, make sure that it's on brand for you and also on brand for them, right? Like if I had an automotive company hit me up, I'm not going to send them a sports edit.
Yes.
That'd be real off. I should probably send them automotive work because that's what they want to see so they can envision themselves into it. So think about that for all of these things when you're pitching these brands because it's super important. And dude, shut up and don't talk as much as you think. Like you should be asking a lot of questions to learn, not just like I have my elevator pitch. I think I have it really down right now. It's like I can say it in under 30 seconds. Beautiful. Get to understanding more about what it is that they do, and then you can take that information and see if you can help them.
All right, let's move on to step number 8, mastering the sales call.
Ooh, this is super fun. I've failed on so many sales calls, so I can give you guys so much practical advice to this.
I do want to say, talking about money and like pitching your services and talking to a potential new client, it can be really scary, but the whole purpose of a sales call and a discovery call is to not only find out if you're a right fit for them, but if they're a right fit for you. And this goes back to what you were saying. It's like if a brand comes to you and needs something that you can't actually provide them with, it's not a right fit. And there's a lot of power in knowing like who exactly you do serve and how you can help them, because it gives you clarity as a business. And if you get hit up by a brand that needs some work and you can't get that done for them, it's better to be honest with them and say, hey, I can't do this, but I know somebody that can.
I think the number one question that you need to know in the back of your head before you get on the phone is what a ballpark thing it costs to do stuff with you guys.
Yes.
Right. Regardless of the level. Like, let's say your company, you guys are always like, oh, we always do $150,000 plus commercials or whatever it is. I don't know what you guys work in. Okay. But let's just say, hey, to work with us, like our minimum level of engagement is $50,000 or $20,000 or $5,000, or maybe it's $1,000. You got to know said number. So when you get on the phone and they're like, oh, what would it cost to do this thing? It's like, okay, for our crew, we only have 3 people that do this type of work together. So we have our photographer, we bring in a DP, and we bring in a gaffer or bring in a producer, whatever. You got to be able to explain that and off the top of your head know, okay, for the deliverable type that they're asking for, this is going to take 1 day. And then for the 5 roles that I'm thinking of, this is probably going to cost anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000, depending on how crazy we go with art or how much the location costs, or if we bring in extra talent for all these things. Like, you just got to be able to know off the top of your brain, like, that's how much these things cost. Most of the time, little rocks, when you're getting on the phone, you're already nervous and you don't know what it is that your fee costs. So when they hit you and they're like, oh, do you do this? And you don't do it, you're like, I could do that. If you don't do it, then don't do it. If that's like not your area of expertise, don't do it. Or you just say, hey, I wouldn't do that. Like, for example, before I even started a company, if someone hit me up and they're like asking me for photos, I don't do photos. I don't take photos. Not a photographer. I don't do that, but I have a really talented photographer that I work closely with. And then you throw your buddy a job. Don't say yes to something that you don't do, or you don't know someone who does it really well, because then it can just bite you in the ass.
You want to know your minimum level of engagement,
which is what?
The minimum amount of money you are willing to accept for a job to work with said brand.
Cool.
Once you know that, okay, you set yourself up for success. Navigating a sales call and a discovery call successful comes down to the questions that you ask. The better questions you ask, the more successful you're going to be on these sales calls. The number one question to ask is, what's your budget? And that is a really scary thing to ask. And I remember when I was first starting out, the amount of times that I would like hop on a call with a client. Okay, great. You need this. I can do that. Boom, boom, boom. You hang up and you're like, fuck, I think I'm going to charge like $1,000 or $1,500, but I don't even know what their budget was. And then you like either create a whole pitch deck and then you present it to the brand and they're like, oh, that's actually out of our budget. You save yourself a lot of headache if you ask them what their budget is.
I've probably lost maybe 2 months of my life working on decks for brands that never responded to me, but it's my own fault when I was starting, because I didn't ask them what their budget was. and you just shoot yourself in the foot by not knowing that information. Or at least if they say, in a perfect world, they tell you we have $25,000 or we have $5,000 to make this happen. And then you say, that's perfect for us. Or yeah, that's just not even like remotely close to what we work in. This is the range that we feel comfortable working in for deliverables like what you're sharing. It's also your job to educate them. Like if they have references, right? And they're showing you references and you know that what they want and the reference they're showing you don't align. They're showing you Spielberg's movie and they're like, we have $5. You got to let them know off the bat, like, hey, we can't make something like that, but this is what we can make for the money that you're explaining that you guys have. What are a few great questions that people can ask on the phone besides what's your budget? Give me the other few.
Another question is, are there any other specific brands that you admire? That way you're more aligned and you have a better idea of what kind of content they're actually after. And then you can let them know if you're able to like actually execute on that type of style.
Another one too is just if they've worked with if you're a videographer, photographer, you're an agency, you're a production company, have you guys worked with other people like this in the past? And if so, how did it go? And you'll learn right off the bat, like different pain points that they had of working with this other company or this other person. They'll tell you, oh, they were lax on response time. I'd probably say in my pitch, we're going to be really good at getting back here within 24 hours, guaranteed. And if we don't do that, we're not coming through on our promise. Like, let them know that. So then they're like, oh my God, Mikey's company is great at response time. That's their whole thing. And we really struggle with that with our last company that we worked with. If you guys do that, don't say it if you don't do it.
It also makes the brand feel like you're going to provide them with a better experience, because you're like, okay, what did this other person do that you maybe didn't like or like? Let's lean into what you did like that they did, but I'm going to do my best to lean away from the stuff that you didn't like that they did.
Totally. And I think another big one, it's like, what would a home run look like for you guys? Like, what would this knocked out of the park look like?
Not only do we ask this with brands, but we also do this on our pre-show calls with podcast guests. It's like, hey, what would a home run conversation look like? Like, what is on your mind? What do you want to talk about? That's kind of a little bit different, but I that has honestly changed a lot for us asking that question, because then it's like, oh, well, I've been asked, these questions before, but I actually want to talk about this. I think this would make for a more interesting conversation.
Another great one is like how to measure success in the marketing world. They use like KPIs, key performance indicator. Like what are we measuring this off of? Is it sales? Is this an awareness ad? Are we just going to put a bunch of money behind this and a bunch of people see it? Like, does someone need to click a link to get to where this is going and be a positive experience for both parties?
This goes back to what we were saying, how brands don't care about how pretty your video is or how great your photos are. They care about results. And so if you can show them that you care about the metrics in which they're going to indicate their success off of, it lets the brand know that you care about their results, and it makes it about the brand's success as opposed to just like, hey, look at how cool this video is.
And another big one is just the timeline.
Yes.
Like, that shouldn't be a secret. You shouldn't like not know when they need stuff by. If is there a key date that this stuff has to go live by? And if it's rushed, you can say, hey, we have no problem getting this to you within like a week span. It is going to be a rush fee on top of it, because normally this would be like a 3-week long project for us. We have so many other things that we're working on right now. We'd love to get it to you in this time period, and it's possible. We just do need to book this time out. This is what it's going to cost.
Also, be realistic with your work back schedule, because don't tell a brand that you can get them something within 24 hours when it's just not feasible. Like, if you have a bunch of other stuff that you're working on, you got to be honest about when you can get this back to them. This also allows you to over deliver in some capacity, right? So like if you say, hey, we can get this to you in a week's time, you can over deliver by maybe a day earlier. You don't, like you said, you don't always have to do it, but that is a way to like give yourself more grace than you think you need.
I have had this objection asked to me so many times, because I felt like I did raise my rates a little earlier than I should have, but I'm not mad at it, because the clients the clients that didn't want to work with me didn't want to work with me, and the clients that did, I was paid like double what I was getting paid. But anyways, this is a common one that you'll hear. Oh, that's just a little too expensive. What I like to do when I get that one is I totally agree, because it probably is expensive. And I'll say, yeah, it is expensive because we're really good at what we do. We know that it works, which is why we charge what we do. And a lot of the time they'll be like, oh, we worked with, my cousin does this. My cousin does video, and why don't I just hire him? Why don't I hire him? I'm like, yeah, sure. You should hire him. What does he do super well? Like, have you guys worked together in the past? Like, why are you on the phone with me right now if you could have just hired your cousin Mikey, And they'll be like, well, I wanted a professional. Like, there it is. You want a professional. I'm a professional, which is why it costs what it does, right? You can go in any industry, there's always the Walmart and there's always the Louis Vuitton. I'll tell you for damn sure, if it's something important for my brand, I want the people that are the best at it. And that's kind of how you have to position the conversation. If they're like, yo, I can get someone for half the price. It's like, for sure. Why are we on the phone though? Have you worked with someone at half the price before? How did it go?
Yeah.
There's a reason why we're on this phone call right now. It's like, you clearly like what we're putting out. That's just the cost of what that's just what this stuff goes for.
And this goes back to what we started off this podcast saying about positioning. If you're a specialist and you're really good at one specific thing, if they say this is really expensive or you're a little too expensive, be like, the reason why I'm so expensive is because I do this one thing that you're looking for better than anybody else. I'm the best at this, or I'm extremely good at this. You can trust me because I've done this for X amount of years. I've worked with so-and-so brands, and you know that the quality of the product you're going to get when working with me is higher than all these other generalists, all these other Joe Schmoes that you've been talking to. There's a reason why it hasn't worked out in the past, and this is the reason why it costs what it costs. This
is a fun one that I've gotten before too. Like, hey, is there any way we could do it for a little bit less? I have so many referrals for you, tons. I'm going to refer to you until I have that in writing that they are guaranteeing me, like, they send me their emails. These are the people that they want to work with you for. It never has panned out that way. If anyone's ever said that, like, anytime they want to do it for less, you say, no, that's how much it's going to cost, and just leave it at that. There doesn't need to be you don't need to justify like that number. This is how much it costs, dude.
Yeah.
If I go to the mechanic, I don't ask the mechanic for a discount on the thing. It's like, dude, it costs $1,000 to replace this thing on your car. That's how much it costs. You're not going to tell them, oh, dude, could you do it for $500? It's disrespectful.
Yeah. Before you discount your price, change the deliverables.
Boom. Shake and bake.
There are ways that you can work with certain clients. Let's say your minimum level of engagement is $2,500 to make a 30-second video. I'm just using this as a general example.
Okay.
They come to you and say, oh, we only have $1,500. But you really do want to work with them and you want to find a way. I can't make you a 30, but maybe I could make you a 15. Or let's say they want 30 photos. I can only give you 10 for that amount. There's ways to work with different clients that might not have like your total budget that you're looking for, but just lower the deliverables. Or if you want to make, if you're doing a monthly retainer, right? Let's say you're charging, $3,000 a month for 4 videos. Whatever it is you charge. If they only have $2,000 a month, be like, okay, you know what? I can't do 4 videos for that price, but I can actually do 2 videos and then maybe 5 photos for you as well. But like, change the deliverables before you negotiate on your price.
Step number 9 is turning one-off clients into retainers. Now, a retainer is someone that's paying you consistent income every month for, typically it's like the same thing. So, we do 4 social media videos for this brand, or we do 20 photos that we deliver every single month for them, and it's predictable. Typically, you're going to want to do this for 3 months to start, because you gotta know if they're insane. Okay. And they got to know if you're insane. Vice versa, goes both ways. Okay. So if you want to work with them, if they're not crazy, fantastic. It works for 3 months, do a 6 month. Or if you're really confident you've loved working with them and they've loved working with you, say, hey, let's do this for a year and let's see if this works. Right. The best part about retainers is how much money is coming in. It's
totally
huge, dude.
Predictable income.
Predictable income. That's what we want for the rocks. We want predictable income. So if you do a one-off for someone, you can even tell them at the very beginning of it, like, hey, if we crush this, like, we want to work with you guys more. We've really enjoyed this pre-production process. Like, if you guys want to do this monthly, this is what this could look like. Right after the shoot, we should be having a conversation within that week of, hey, we crushed this. You delivered the stuff. You delivered it on time. It was great. They really liked it. We want to keep working with you guys because we really enjoyed your team. Here's what it could look like if we work together on a monthly basis on a 3-month trial period. And if we crush that, let's talk about what this could look like long-term. And like, dude, you're an extension of their brand or of their team, right? You're not like some random third party. It's like, hey, we want to really be in like team. We're a team. We're working together on this, and we want to do this stuff long term.
It helps you build a stronger client relationship one, brands these days, they need consistent content for social media. It's just how the world works now. It's part of marketing. They need consistent photos. They need consistent videos. And so if you can pitch your services as a retainer model where you're saying, hey, let's not just do this one-off, let's work together on a consistent basis. This is what that experience would look like. You're gonna be able to provide a lot more value to this brand because the relationship's just gonna be there.
They do. People want to work with great people.
Totally.
Like every time we work with brands and the brand team's awesome, like all I want is to keep getting called back by them. So we spend more time together and we make great stuff together.
It's also really hard to hit that 10K number a month off of just one-offs. Like if you're doing 10K plus a month off of just one-offs, either you're
the biggest dog.
You're charging a lot of fucking money for what you do, or you're just like your personal brand. You're just getting hit up like a ton. If you break it down, the 10K number, right? You could have like $3,000 a month retainers. That takes you to 9K. And then you're like, I know that I'm going to get maybe a random 1K or 2K job. But if you break down the 10K number to like 4 $2,500 a month retainers, or 3 $3,500 a month retainers, as opposed to like, oh shit, I have to land like 4 or 5 new clients every single month. It gives you predictable income. That's one, but also it makes the 10K number a month less daunting and scary.
I want to remind you though, if you're still here, that Dream Client Accelerator cohort that we're doing is literally this times 10. We are in the weeds with you, helping you with all of the stuff, going over your offers, helping you pitch your clients. It's going to be such a fun 6-week program. I will leave you with number 10, which is an absolute banger. Please go check out the website. Let us know what you think. It's going to be super fun.
Real quick, I think that the best thing about, there's a few great things about the DCA.
Okay.
One, it's live. Okay. So you're able to ask us questions.
Right there.
Okay. Right. Mm-hmm. Second, you get an incredible community of like-minded individuals trying to do the same thing. And I think there's so much benefit in community in what we do. And 3, like you said, because it's live and you have direct access to us, like we're reviewing your guys' pitch decks. We're doing sales calls, like fake sales calls, and practicing with you guys. Like you guys are getting direct hands-on help and advice from us off of like whatever it is, like your website, your spec ad, discovery calls, all that stuff that you want hands-on help with. Like that's what we're here to do.
We want to help you. So go check it out. First link in the description. Number 10 is best practices with clients. Okay. I'm going to give you a blueprint right now. We're going to rapid fire go through this because I think it's so important. Okay. 1 is a work back schedule. They need to know when they're getting content, when they need to get you feedback by. So that way, if there's a key date that they need the stuff by and they miss V1's revision day, we can automatically refer back to that in the email and say, hey, Karen, by the way, we're going to be a day late on this because you guys didn't get us feedback in time, or we're pushing to this day now. That's just how it's going to go, because let's revert back to the scope of work and the work back schedule. Next one is just communicate on time.
Yes.
Nothing burns my ass more than when you're working with someone and they need to give you an email to tell you like yes or no on something, and it overextends for 24 hours. It's like, oh my God, give me what we need so we can help you guys. And same goes for you back to them. Like you have to respond in a timely manner and like be up to date with your emails, be up to date if you're in a Slack channel with them or a Discord or whatever. That is such an easy thing to do better than other brands. And it just makes everyone's lives easier because the communication is open. I'm not saying you got to respond within 5 minutes, but within the hour, if you're checking emails, like have times where you check your emails or have a producer who's supposed to be in contact with them. They should be responding quickly so they get their questions answered, and then everything gets to move so much faster.
On top of how important communication is, organization is also super important. Something that you can use if you're doing, social media content on retainer for a client is, you can use something like monday.com, and you can organize like your ideas, the shoot date, if you're working on it, if it's done, if it's been posted. If you're doing social media content consistently for clients, like you shouldn't just be like showing up and then randomly like sending them a text and being like, okay, I sent you the video, whatever. Have it be organized. Have them know when you're going to shoot, what the idea is, the shoot date, if you've shot it, if it's been edited, and if it's been posted.
That's the blueprint.
Yeah.
And then everything's going to move on so much more smooth. And like you have great communication. They know when they're getting their stuff. You deliver your stuff on time. Dude, bada bing, bada boom. I mean, you guys are on your way to making $10,000 a month. I don't think there's anything else left to tell you besides go put this stuff into practice.
Yeah.
Don't just sit here waiting on it. You have a gold mine of information in front of you. Go use it. Go put it into practice. Start closing more deals. Get to that $10,000 a month. Get some financial freedom.
This was such a fun episode and honestly jam-packed with so much information. I genuinely wish I could have listened to this podcast 10 years ago when I was just starting out.
I would do a lot to listen to this podcast 10 years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, that's been episode 148, the No BS Guide to Making $10,000 a Month as a creative. If you're still here, please hit the like button, drop us a comment, leave us a review, and we'll see you guys all next week. Peace.